Hi everyone, and welcome to The Path to Reason. I'm your host, Cindy Plaza, and tonight or today, depending on where you are, I have the great pleasure to invite Allison the Chaotic Kitten. Hi Allison,
Hi.
how are you
Thanks for
doing?
good. Little nervous, but I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Allison The Chaotik Kitten. I'm in Canada, Métis, Indigenous heritage, atheist, non-binary, advocate for pro-decision, pro-healthcare, she/they pronouns, and I'm usually hanging around in the chats, and I've called quite a few times to various shows like the Ethan and Jenna show, Talk Heathen, Truth Wanted, The Perspective, The Pickup Line, The Hang Up, The Sunday Show.
Yeah,
So
normally people who are familiar with all the atheist shows out there, they probably know you already because they've seen your contributions in the chats and your calls. Um, so thanks for being here. I'm very happy to have you here. Um, and I'm going to ask you a question I ask all my guests. Usually it's maybe a little bit more relevant to them because they usually have a public image, but you don't. But I'm still going to ask you the question. So, if you remove everything you just said about yourself, about your activism, about your atheism, what's left? Who are you as a human being?
hmm. Well, I'm a caring and compassionate person who is seeking the truth and would just love to see everybody be treated equally and, get the health care that they need when they need it, and decisions are respected. And I'm, I am just a girl who's stuck under capitalism and colonization, and looking to share my voice amongst the interwebs.
Nice. Thank you for that. So we're going to talk about the scandal of the boarding schools in the US and in Canada. And you have a very specific perspective on that. Can you explain us why?
I do. I was born in the beginning of the 80s, so the residential schools were in full swing, and my when I grew up, my dad was in the army, and my mom, and he's European, and my mom is has the Métis heritage, and sorry, I am very, very nervous.
It's okay. Just take a breath, a deep breath, and collect your thoughts.
Okay, so I'm here to just share my perspective on living as a mixed race, like living as Indigenous and being able to pass off as white to not get negative attention, not be punished, and not be taken to a residential school. And when I was in regular public school, I found that the curriculum was very European based, and the teachers just were mean. I'm not going to lie, the teachers were mean. And if you did anything uh, against their rules, you were punished in all kinds of different fashions. Like, we weren't beat up, but we were shamed and
Yeah,
things like that.
because basically, when a wild white child misbehaves, it's just kids misbehaving. But when it's a mixed race or a stranger child, it's because he's not American, right?
Hmm. Yeah, so and then I have a learning disorder, so that made it very easy for the teachers to, you know,
To
um,
target you.
yeah, target me, bully me, um, shame me. And then I developed a very negative self-talk to myself too, and I would do it to myself. And I started school in Saskatchewan, and uh, when I moved to Alberta, I noticed that the school system was quite a bit different. The teachers were nicer; they weren't like militant kind of thing. But when I was in elementary, I went to um, a school where all the army kids lived because I lived on one of the army bases in the city in the 90s, and that school would is pretty much just like um, a residential school minus all of the like assault and things like that. But it was, we had to do things their way or we would get punished. And like I never I struggled to enjoy school. I struggled to enjoy being in a place where I was constantly looked down on, where I was picked on and not understood or accepted, and I just could never figure out why. And I always thought it was something wrong with me and my personality. But I I never, like, I was never told how much in danger I actually was. And I've been realizing just a lot of different things, like um, it explains my mom's just overall fear of people that she had, especially when me and my brother were very, very little. Like she didn't trust people. She wouldn't, like, we didn't go to daycare. We didn't go to preschool. And um when I went to kindergarten, my mom quickly realized that I was a little bit behind on things, but she probably was like, well, they're going to teach her everything that she needs to know to stay safe and assimilate anyway. And so, but
So
my
I,
mom
I
never gave me trouble for like being a problem in school. Like she said that the teachers were just, they didn't hold back. They were very mean about like with the things that they said. And but my mom wouldn't punish me for it. My dad wouldn't punish me for it. But um
I assume that there are no or almost no natives in the teachers in those schools.
no, no, no. They were white or European. Like I did not have native uh, teachers. I didn't really know anything about it. Nobody told any, like my um like the army, like my family um to stay safe went with the army, like back when, after the war and everything, when Canada was being colonized, the Canadian Army encouraged the soldiers to come and marry the Indigenous women, and then um, So that's how our family kind of worked. So I'm not sure which generation started um, like married. I think it was either a French man or a European
Mm.
man. That's where Métis comes from. So
Yeah.
so it was
What,
like I never really understood what being Métis meant, and I thought that because I was like 4 or 5 or 6 generations down, that I didn't have, and I was always told that I didn't have enough Métis in me and I wouldn't be able to get a status card. But in the end, not getting a status card and not, you know, ex- quote unquote exposing myself as Aboriginal, that saved me a lot of grief, that saved me from being taken to a residential school, that saved me being refused for basic health care and being stuck on a reserve or
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, you managed to avoid the worst of both sides.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So did your parents or your mother specifically told you anything about your heritage or their culture or anything as you were growing up?
Mm, no, not really. Like looking back now, I know for 100% that my mom, like, she had a fear of people, so she didn't work, and so she was able to take her time and plan everything all out and pick everything. So everything in the house was all planned out to look as European or white or Canadian as possible. All of the decorations, like we celebrated Christmas and Easter and all of that, but um, and like all my clothes and everything, it was like she made it so we looked as white as possible to try to blend in so I wouldn't get as much trouble. And like I would hear my grandma occasionally say, "Well, I'm Métis," and just kind of drift off. And it's like, okay, well, what does Métis mean? And it's like, well, you don't want to go on a reservation. It's really bad there. They've barely got any water, and it's like it's horrible. Do you be safe? It's like um, and then on top of it, my brother, he's autistic. So when when we figured out something was wrong with him, we were living in Saskatchewan and there weren't even any medical facilities available that were dealing with autism. And with my dad being in the army, he was like, okay, well, what can you guys do to help? And they were just kind of humming and hawing. And then my dad got posted to Germany to like go to the bases out there, but we weren't sure if like having my brother in one of the like housing quarters would be okay because he was very loud and we had a trouble controlling him, right? And we didn't know how because he couldn't talk, and so we couldn't communicate to him. It was really difficult to try and figure out what he wanted and needed, and so it's a lot of noise, and we thought that there was a possibility that we'd get kicked out, and then we didn't know if there were any services there. And so we stayed in Saskatchewan, and then my dad got posted to Alberta. And a couple of years later, some of my dad's cousins from Germany came in, and she said that she had been working with autistic kids for like the last like 15, 20 years. And my dad was just like, what? Are you serious? Like, But when we came to Alberta, there is a facility specifically specializing in autistic children and um, improving their quality of life and everything. And so he lived there, and then we moved into the army base that was in the city, and I was there for 3 years. And I recently found out that that army base was actually on stolen native land. So, but it was like that time of my life was the best time of my life ever. Like I could go anywhere in the base that I wanted, and like I was able to play outside and connect with nature and just be myself and be a kid, and just I did whatever I liked. But I was never taught anything to do with my Indigenous heritage at all. Um, but I know that is because, number one, if they're like, I don't know if any of my family members even went to residential school or if any of them are missing or anything. But like I heard the odd story that like my grandma, she only had a grade 7 education, and I always wondered why. And she said they were bullied at school and called dirty little Indians and stuff. And but she didn't really talk about anything else except for how strict her mom was. Um, and I think her mom was very, very strict to enforce the rules of blending in and assimilating. And when they um, didn't do what they were told, they'd get punished. Like they get a belt or a ruler or whatever.
Yeah, but it's a way
So,
to protect you. So
and yeah, and it's like, so what ends up developing is just this need to follow the rules to the exact letter, or or else you're gonna get punished, you're gonna get hurt, something bad's gonna happen to you, and it turns into a fear of like, oh my god, if I don't do this way right now, this second, I'm gonna get beaten up, kind of thing. And we were never told, like, if I was told to go do something and I'd ask why, I would get the whole because I told you so. That was my dad usually doing that. And for the longest time I was like, oh my god, my dad is so mean, he just yells at me. And now it's just like he was like, come on kid, do as I tell you so you stay safe.
yeah,
I don't want stuff happening to you. So
yeah, it's already bad enough to have one group trying to erase another culture by force, but it's even worse when this victim culture imposes it to itself because of fear, because of that makes me so sad.
yeah, it's not a it's not the recommended way to live. But I mean, it's like, I remember my grandma, she passed away a couple, what was it, last year in April. And she's 89, and she'd always go to the doctor, like she'd have pain in her chest and she's having trouble breathing and everything, and they'd run all kinds of physical tests on her and she would be physically fine. And then they would send her home, and it's like, why didn't anybody ask her about her mental health? Like, why wasn't she given the chance to do therapy or anything, right? And it's just, that's where the whole turning away, we get turned away from mental health care comes in, right? They're just focused on the physical part of it, but they don't like the typical free health care, free mental health where I am. It's like a year and a half to 2 year wait, like minimum. And then it's just really basic therapy, and the therapy is geared towards getting you ready to go back to work, and it doesn't address any of the intergenerational trauma. And I don't think that a lot of people out there know that that's what it is. That's the problem. They could think it's some other like personality disorder or anxiety disorder or something, but it's like,
But it's a systemic issue.
yeah, it's a systemic issue that nobody knows how to deal with because everybody's expected to assimilate and not complain about it and just live that way and not question it. And, so it just turns my stomach just thinking about it. Like, I'm grateful for um, I'm grateful for everything that my parents did to keep me safe. But unfortunately, my mom passed away when I was 16. And then I was kind of just tossed away to the wolves of life, kind of thing. And because I didn't know that my self-worth really had nothing to do what the teachers were telling me and giving me trouble, and I couldn't figure out why I was having all this trouble. I started hanging around people who were in the same boat as me, and they're hurting, so they're toxic. And I had a lot of traumatic experiences that I went through. But I always had this instinct to just watch what everybody else is doing, remember it, and act like them, have the same mannerisms, don't be in the spotlight, and just blend in and be one of the spectators. And when I did that, like, I didn't get harassed by the police. I didn't get harassed by like other people. Like, if the situation would have been a lot different if I would have acted differently. So I learned really fast how to be safe, when it's time to leave, um when things are bad. And yeah, it's so hard to talk so vague without like just a bunch of details. And
No, I understand because
yeah,
I felt the same, but for different reasons. When you're trans and you have to keep it from everyone, then you do the same. You just observe and then do whatever everyone does. So yeah,
you
I
pass as what you want people to perceive you as.
yeah,
So
you put on a
I
mask.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like I'm European. I have an English first name and a German Polish last name, and I'm dark skinned because I'm tanned, but I've got blonde hair though, so um, it's just hard to live and have to do things that you're not really interested in, that have nothing to do with your heart desires.
Mm.
And it's like, it's like I feel very like my identity is just so shattered, and it's like it's just all of these roles and all of these pieces that I had to learn and assimilate to and pass as being white in order to
Yeah,
Be
that's
safe.
something I wanted to address, because when you're cut off from your origins, it has an impact on who you are, because
Hmm.
we behave like our parents, we assimilate their culture, their way of thinking. But if you don't have that, if you have to, like we said, put on a mask and act as everyone is expected you to, uh, then basically you don't have any identity. and
Hmm.
and and that's psychologically, that's very damaging.
Yeah, yeah, and um, it's really hard too because it's like I never identified with the gender roles of colonization either, like the European gender roles. I'm just like I don't I was looked at like a tomboy. I was a total tomboy as a kid. I was, on outside in the jungle gyms and then video games and that too. And I just did what I liked when I could. And but it just never felt right to me. I always felt like I was faking it. And it's like I'm not really truly happy with what's happening around me and who's around me and how they perceive me. It's like I'm not like when someone says, "Oh, I know you better than you know yourself," that just irritates me so much. It's like, no,
Yeah,
you don't.
because it also impacts your ability to connect with other people.
Yeah,
So yeah, I understand that.
yeah. So unfortunately, because there's that struggle to connect with healthy people, we end up. I spent a lot of time growing up and living my life around very toxic people, and
But now we have internet, and you can connect to healthy people who accept you as you are all
yeah,
around the world. That's, I guess, that I imagine that changed a lot in your life. Did it?
it did. Yeah, it's like I no longer feel guilty for being home because I'm socializing every day. Um, there's always a conversation to be had out there, and I just want to have those conversations with people. And like I'd like to get to know what two spirit means, and all the what the rules were in like my tribe, you know. Um, I'm thinking though with my finger dexterity and how poor it is, I probably wouldn't be somebody who creates crafts. Like I might do it on like a one-off and be like, okay, there you go. But I don't know, like I love to be active and things like that. So
So
like
you're
I kind of get a little bit of comfort knowing that there's nothing actually wrong with me. Like I'm not defective because I'm not responding to these gender roles the way I'm supposed to, because I'm supposed to be something else.
yeah,
And then the food too, that's another issue that I'm having, is that like my mom, she passed away at 43 and I'm 40 and she got cancer twice. And
I'm so sorry.
I think thanks. It's just so hard because like we were like inseparable, and we were very close, and she didn't let too many people in her life. It was like this highest honor to even be able to sit with her and have a chat for like a few hours. Um, so when she passed away, a lot of my identity died with her, I think. and I was just trying to grow up and all lost. But I do take comfort that, it's just a normal response to what I've been through. I just hope that, like, I just struggle with wondering if the food that I'm eating is, right for my body or not, because indigenous people didn't eat what we eat now, like, at all. Like, all of the, everything was all, like, it's genocide, so all the crops and everything was all taken over, so, and changed.
So
And it
have
made
have you
us really sick. Sorry?
have you tried reconnecting with a reservation, or tried to find any family you would have as natives?
I'm I'm slowly doing that. Like, I know my tribe is from Manitoba, and a lot of my mom's family are in Manitoba. But the government subsidy that I'm on is, it's not federal, it's provincial. So if I were to move to Manitoba, I would have to reapply for my status, and then probably get, I think it's $400 or $500 less a month. So in a way, I'm like stuck here for now. But I have talked to a couple of my grandma's sisters, so like um, my great grandma's or great aunt, and like I've gotten a few last names, and uh, like I think we started in Manitoba, and we're like genuine. There's like the broad term Métis, and then there's the actual like Métis tribe based out of Manitoba. So, but I'm just like, I would love to know more. I'm just really, really kind of afraid to go forward because I don't want to expose myself. I don't want to be in the light. Like, this is just a brave move, I think, right now, doing what I'm doing, talking about this, right?
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree.
So,
But
but I
yeah,
have connected with some family, and I've been kind of talking with them, but I don't know, I haven't quite figured out how to approach them and start asking those big questions and having those big conversations.
yeah, the thing is, when you've spent your entire life repressing something, it's very, very hard to stop doing that and expressing it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm sorry, I don't want to make this about me, but I've been in that very same situation. I am in this very same situation, having to hide whatever you are, and then suddenly you can show it and you can express it. It's very scary. So yes, I totally agree with you that it's what you're doing right now is very, very brave, and I hope that people will watch that and see it and say, yeah, we need to do more than that, and try to reconnect with our family and ancestors. And because we didn't start talking about the boarding school scandal or yet, but I hope that this will make people talk and gather people that were set apart 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I can't even begin to imagine what it was like for my ancestors to go through what they went through, defending their true identities and culture and everything. And like we gotta we need accountability. We're looking for accountability. Now looking at the Catholic Church and Canadian government and RCMP and Canadian military. We're looking at you, and the Anglican and the other churches as well that were involved in residential school, and then all of the effort it took to keep it hush hush from the rest of the world. That's the amount of effort is just disgusting, to um like I remember in school how it was, a peaceful kind of thing, but there were murmurs in the background about, cultural genocide.
Hmm.
But as kids, we don't know what cultural genocide really means, and, kind of romanticized it. And, oh, no, it's not a big deal. And, they've got museums and they've got these exhibits. Like um, there's a one like museum exhibit, and it's called Head Smashed in Buffalo Jump, and they have all of the indigenous culture and what they did and how they lived off the land and the buffalo and everything. And I think it was about a 12 or 13-year-old kid, and we go to this place, and I'm like, why is this a was? Why is this not happening anymore? What happened to all of the buffalo? What happened to all of the land? What happened? What happened? What happened?
Yeah, that's every time I think about what Europeans did to the natives, I have this huge sentiment of lost. Of loss. We lost. Well, they lost so much in terms of knowledge, in terms of wisdom, in terms of culture. It's almost unbearable to realize all that's gone and that we'll never get back. And
Yeah,
when I say we, I mean humanity in general. But yeah, that's. I don't think there's been any genocide that was so systemic for such a long time, that was at the same time human and also cultural. Because yeah, the natives were killed to steal their properties, their lands, and everything else. But also there was a concerted effort by the church and by the state to erase the culture and everything natives were.
yeah. Colonization just destroyed our culture, and like just like I always had this real deep seated hatred for religion when I was growing up, and I just didn't know why at all. But now I know why. Oh, like uh, I think when the first 215 children were found in BC, that's when I really started to think and realize and be like, holy shit, that could have been me. I could have been taken to one of those schools. My brother could have been taken. And being autistic, my brother wouldn't have survived. And that's such a terrifying thought. And yeah, like, so I just started remembering. And my mom gave me the gift of being a kid, and she didn't force the rules on me as much, and she just let me be a kid. And a lot of parents and people were like, "Oh, you're coddled, you're helicopter parenting, you're um, doing everything for them, blah 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 blah." But in the end, if my mom wouldn't have done that, I probably wouldn't be here, because I would not have been taught compassion and kindness, and that, you know, everybody does deserve to be treated equal, no matter what they look like, what gender they identify as, what their culture is, the color of their skin, everything. And
Yeah, I would just like to correct something I said a couple of minutes ago, talking about the size of the systemic genocide and cultural genocide. Of course, Africa lived the same thing for maybe for longer time. So
oh yeah,
I just wanted to correct that, because yeah, it's unfair to them to say that, and to forget what they went through, because France also has, because I'm French, I've been living in Belgium for 5 years, but I grew up in France, and France has a long history of colonization in Africa,
hmm
and we still have troubled history with that, especially with Algeria. So yeah, we need to acknowledge that this happened too.
yeah. And Daryl was saying something about, like, in South America too. There's a lot of there's just so much, like, everywhere, like, just anywhere where there's colonization, I guarantee there's been cultural genocide there. Like, it's just it, um, and people don't know. They have no idea, and it's like we're just expected to forget about it and just live our lives normally, when it's like we're not allowed to live our normal. Thank you very much. Like, we would really like to, just be able to live our normal and do the things that we want to do without the worry of being watched or judged or penalized or assaulted, or, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, for it. And, like, I don't know, like, just have one little voice, and I don't know what I what I can do, but this is a
Well,
start.
you're already doing something by being here.
Yeah.
So hopefully this video will give you chances to appear on every shows. I'm pretty sure Ethan will love to have you, and probably other people too. So yeah, I think this discussion needs to be had. Uh, what's the current status? I think it's 8 boarding schools and over 1,000 children found so far.
Yeah, the last one was just 160 in BC. So it was 1505 plus 160. My math is very bad. I'm not able to visualize in my head, so I literally can't do math in my head. But I can hear math, if that makes sense.
1775.
Oh,
So
that's a lot. And you know what? It's just the tip of the iceberg. It's just
exactly, it's just
the
the
tip of
beginning.
the iceberg. Like, in the the acres of the first residential school they found in one in Kamloops, there are still acres and acres to be
Searched.
searched. And we like as an I can't even talk anymore. We've been trying to get these searches started for decades, and
And it
outside
happened by
the
chance.
government, nobody, took things seriously and just thought that we were all just a bunch of drunks that didn't know what we were talking about. And it's like, we know what we're talking about. And another thing that I realized too is kind of just spinning off of what I just said. I remember when I was young, I used to tell, like, I would tell people about, like, being bullied or being, like, asking people, it's like, is it right if someone does this to you or whatever? And I would, get sad and then be like, why, what is it about me that, people hate and everything? But I never got validated. It just fell on deaf ears. And it was like, people would say, oh yeah, you should go look up sympathy. It's in the dictionary between shit and syphilis. And then I would just stop talking because I'm like, okay, obviously this person doesn't care. And it happened to me repeatedly. And it's even like doctors and like healthcare people, I would start describing things that happened to me, and they would just be like, oh, sounds like you're depressed. Here, have some pills, and they wouldn't, say, follow up with me, come back, or whatever. They just didn't care. And I think it was either my very first call or my second or third call. I was talking to Ethan and Jenna on their show, and I was saying that, whenever I expressed some kind of trauma or bullying, it used to fall on deaf ears, and I didn't know why. And it's like, now I think about it and go and think, it's like, well, you're just indigenous, so I was treated like I just had to suck it up because it happened to everybody and it was normalized. And nobody had to do anything about it because nobody cares or whatever. You're just like disregarded or ignored or unvalidated or not taken seriously. Like I went when I was in 2015, I went into the hospital because I was suicidal. And but the way I talked to the staff, I was nice and coherent and everything, and I wasn't losing my shit. They said that, I seemed like a really smart person and I'm articulate, and that some CBD therapy should help me. And they booked an appointment with me a month later and sent me home.
Yeah, I hear two things in what you just said. First, that healthcare, mental healthcare is bad, but I think it's everywhere.
Yeah.
We for so long we've been taught that if you behave not normally, then you have a demon in your head, and so that's a bad thing. So globally, we need to make a better job at working on mental health, because I don't understand the, well, yeah, I understand where it comes from, but this distinction between physical healthcare and mental one is nonsense, because the brain is an organ like the others. There's no reason to treat it differently, uh, except for the specificity of the way it works. And we need to work a lot on that. And the second thing was that when you said everything you said and everything you went through fell on deaf ears, I think it's also it's pretty much the same thing as what's happening today in the US with teaching CRT. It's because people don't want to face the fact that their ancestors were bad people. That's a human thing, but um, again, we've been, for so long, we've been taught that uh, if you are the son of or the daughter of, you are the same as your parents, because that's the basic rule behind royalty, and all the benefits people had over the centuries, it all went down through family, because you are assumed to be like your parents. And so, in the opposite, when your parents are criticized for something they did, then you feel like it's criticized to yourself too. And that's something we need to talk about too, because that's just wrong. You're not responsible for what your parents did.
Yeah. And
But that doesn't mean you can't acknowledge it and try to repair it. That doesn't make you a bad person, that your ancestor were slave owners or committed genocide, or that's not up to you. It's up to you to change it today and make amends, and not necessarily make amends for your parents, but at least acknowledge it.
and try to be an ally, try to be understanding, try to really be like, how really can I help you? Because there's this whole thing where they say, well, people are afraid to ask for help, and it's like, well, when you repeatedly ask for help and get denied that help and told to suck it up, what else are you going to do? Eventually you're going to give up and you're not going to care anymore, and you're just going to self-medicate and take it into your own hands. And honestly, like, I if I were seen by a doctor who knew about the genocide but just kept enforcing it, I wouldn't want healthcare from that individual.
Sure.
Like, so, like, I'm really lucky I found a therapist who she's like just really into helping me get through all of this trauma. And like, I've caught myself so many times, especially over the past couple of months, where I just have these really, really mean statements in my head, and I'm like, is that racist? Am I being really racist here? Or am I just speaking the truth? And there's always a blurred line between those two things, like, am I being racist when I say I don't like doing things in the white culture that I was you know, forced to assimilate to? Or
I don't think so. Being racist would say that because white people did something to your family before, they're all bad today, and you don't want to have anything to do with them. That would be racist.
yeah,
But that's not what you're doing.
like, I have this like, I'm like, okay, well, I have this big beef against the French, and I couldn't understand why, but now I understand why. But it's like, you're French and you had nothing to do with it, so you are your own person, you're an individual, and you're an ally, instead of somebody who's just like, well, I wasn't there, so you can't blame me, and leave it at that. And it's just,
Yeah, apathy is. I think it's a bigger problem in our society because there are so many issues that we realize now that you cannot, well, you cannot have empathy for everything that's going on because you will lose your mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, at some point, some people say, okay, I just close myself to all this because it's too much. But I think it's better to try and have empathy for the problems that you can encounter in your day-to-day life. Like if you live in the US, you can have people who were traumatized by religion, or people like you in your situation, or LGBTQ people, or
Hmm.
and this you can emphasize with and empathize with. So yeah, nobody asks anyone uh, to have empathy for everyone on the planet. We know that's not how humans work, but at least for the people around you, that's the least you can do.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, like, some people have, toxic family members, and you can't change them, but you can, you know, increase the distance, and keep them at arm's length, or keep them in the balcony of your life where, you know, the the conversations are limited and there's less chances of their toxicity seeping onto you, and you're already, hurt and going through a rough time to begin with. So, like, I have pretty much, I'm at a state of just complete reboot. Like, cut all the toxic people out, and I'm just rebuilding the friend base and networks and identity and everything. And it's just like, it's really interesting because one of my strengths is verbal communication, like anything to do with words. And I'm really good with communicating most of the time. Not always guaranteed, especially when
When you're a bit
I'm really
nervous,
nervous. Yeah. But I wrote a little note, and I put forced to identify with a language and culture that isn't mine. So it's hard to describe things in a different language that's not from
yeah,
your culture, your DNA, and everything. And so I don't know. A lot of pieces have just been coming together for me, like, and it's a really good thing. And another thing I thought is that there's this whole big thing with labels, like, oh, like, people label themselves as this and that and whatever else, like, or label other people as this and that and whatever. Personally, I don't think that there's anything wrong with putting labels on yourself, especially when you're trying to figure out what what is true and what is not, and what sticks and what falls off, and what fits, kind of thing.
yeah. When your identity is broken, it can help you rebuild it.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I mean, try the different labels on. If you don't like them, you can just peel them
Yeah,
off, right? And it's harder to do that when you're putting labels on other people. And when you put labels on other people, you limit their talents, and you limit your your expectations of what they can actually do, and how good of a person they are, and what kind of success they can have in life. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's, yeah.
yeah.
So
Purple Rhyme says in the chat, safe labeling is useful for starting conversations. And I kind of agree with that, but I've been known for saying several times that I hate labels. But I think you were right saying that it can be helpful to build or define or refine your identity. In
Hmm.
that sense, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, yeah. Like, you have control over yourself and your reactions and your emotions and everything. You do not have control over anything outside of you. People, pets, whatever, it doesn't matter. Um, so it's really just, there's really a lot of different angles, and a lot of it is about language too. Like using the English language
Yeah,
to put those pieces together, kind of thing.
yeah, because I assume that well, language is derived from Indo-European languages, but I assume that native language are structurally very different, I guess.
Hmm. Yeah, I was reading into it. There's Métis language that was Aboriginal, and then French mixed in with it, or French and English and Aboriginal, and um, I think for the official Métis language, there's only like 100 speakers left that speak it. So it's just it. A lot of the languages are endangered, and a lot of them, unfortunately, are extinct because there's nobody left that knows them because it's been genocided. All no thanks to the Catholic Church and government, RCMP, Canadian Army, hospitals, etc., etc.
So regarding this boarding school history, I think it's maybe too early to say if people involved will cooperate with the police because a couple of weeks ago I made a video comparing this situation and what happened with the I don't remember the name they gave them, but the single mothers' homes in Ireland. I don't know if you're familiar with this story.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Daryl brought it up when I called in. I was talking to him. Magdal, no, Magdal? No.
Magdalena
I,
something.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No.
It's
So for the for
like
the for
that.
the context, in between 1920 and the 70s, the Irish government uh, trusted one congregation of nuns to take care of single mothers because in Catholic doctrine, single mothers are it's a sin because sex outside marriage is a sin, and a child born in this context is an abomination. So the child doesn't deserve proper burial and all that stupid nonsense around it. So uh, these homes for single mothers, they just didn't take care of the kids, and they just when they died, they just sent them in big holes and just buried them like this. And so they found so far 3,000 kids from different ages, from newborns to toddlers to um, around 12, 13 years old. And
Teenagers. Oh my
the
God.
reason why I mention this is because the nuns that were still alive, they blocked every attempt to cooperate with the police and even provide names of the women or the children involved in these homes. So I hope this is not going to happen in the US and Canada as well.
Oh, it
Um,
already has been. They've been fighting the courts and the governments and the church for generations, for decades, like a century even, just I like it's not going to be something that can be solved overnight, but I really hope that um, people cooperate, and these babies can be found and brought home and have proper burials. Like, I never thought that I would realize that we live in a day and age where not everybody who's died has been given a marker or a gravestone with their name, and it just horrifies me. And like like when my mom died, I didn't like I was only 16, so I wasn't given much of a chance to say what would happen. And my mom, she didn't know what she wanted, and she was scared to talk about it, and I didn't know. And like um my family didn't tell me, and so they just improvised, and we had a funeral with open casket and service and everything, um and then we had her cremated, and her ashes were put in an urn, and then they were put in the cemetery, and she has a big stone, and I was like an angry child who was like, that's not what she wanted. But now I'm thinking that I'm really grateful that they did that, and they gave her a headstone. And I'm going to see if I can get the message and things changed on it. And so it says more than just her name and years she was alive, and may she rest in peace or whatever. So
Yeah, like I said earlier, I really hope that these discoveries they will force now there is a lot of public outrage. They will force to deal with the situation, and accountability is one thing, but I think the most important thing is to give the tools to allow people to rebuild these communities that have been
yeah,
destroyed. Allow people to find their ancestors, the way they lived, and take back their culture. Um, that's what I want to see happening in the next years.
yeah, I really, really want that too. A couple of my family members, like they're around my age. One is just signed up and is working for the Métis Federation, I think, and another one is a student or a teacher, and she is incorporating indigenous culture into her curriculum, as well as the truth of what happened. And she like she taught the kids about the medicine wheel, and a lot of them are indigenous, and we're really, really happy that they're embracing that in the classroom. And more that needs to happen more um, in more schools. And like the Canadian government needs to improve the school system overall. It's like it forces teachers to be underpaid and have to like buy things that they want to teach their students, and crafts and things out of their own pockets. And it's just, it needs to be changed. So much of
Yeah,
this country needs to be changed, like, but there's also a big portion of this country who are enjoying living the way it is, and they don't want to see a change. They don't want any other cultures to come in, and so it's just
Yeah, because now there is Canadian identity, and many of them will see this rise of other identities in the same country as a threat to theirs. It's again what's happening in the U.S. right now, and in many other countries. Everywhere you have a strong right-wing movement, it feeds on that. So yeah.
Are there any questions for me in the chat? Is there anybody in chat?
Yeah, there's Purple Rhymes with Orange who answered my comment about labels. So if you want to know exactly what I think about labels, look at my video with Dr. Darrell Ray. I explain it very well there. Takes some time, so I won't do it again here because we've been over the hour. I would like to wrap this up to not take too much time from Allison. Do you have anything you would like to add?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I hope I answered all your questions. I kind of feel like I was a bit rambly and going a little over the place, but I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a pre-script because that shit doesn't work, and I didn't want to sound like a presup. So
yeah, and I didn't plan too many questions either because as I told you earlier, I wanted you to speak from your heart and just say what you feel, and so that's why I let you talk a lot. And even when you hesitated, I just wanted you to express yourself, and that's why I led the interview like this. So thank you too for agreeing to be here. And it was lovely lovely to have you here. Thanks everyone in the chat and viewing right now. If you like my content, please like, subscribe, push the notifications, and share if you think this topic should be talked about much more. And other than that, thank you again, everyone, and I'll see you later.
Bye.